My brother became a millionaire, and I became his housekeeper. Today, I own two houses, a massive investment portfolio, and I'm married to his business partner, though only on paper. I grew up in a conservative family in the American South. My brother, Preston, 38, was always the golden child. Even as a kid, people said, he's going to be someone great. I, Jess, 33, was the quiet one, building houses with Lego, solving math problems voluntarily, and secretly dismantling radios. Still, our parents only sent him to an elite college and me to a Catholic home economics school. After all, girls only need to know what's necessary for running a household and raising children. While Preston studied computer science at Harvard and later founded a startup in Palo Alto, I completed my training at a Catholic home economics school. There wasn't a single male student there. We learned how to properly treat white laundry, systematically plan supplies, and create complex meal schedules for large households or events. The basics of cooking were a central subject, not just the how, but the why. We covered nutrient composition, cooking methods, kitchen hygiene, allergens, storage, and how to calculate portion sizes for different age groups. I learned how to feed a family on $40 a day and how to prepare a sophisticated dinner for 12 guests at a fine dining level. My homemade veal stock and Grand Marnier soufflé were considered exam pieces by the instructors. I knew what I was doing. Food science, household management, textile care, cleaning techniques, child and elder care, as well as budgeting and organizational psychology were also on the curriculum. Sometimes I even enjoyed it. I was good at it. Structured, forward-thinking, precise, that was my thing. But I hated the unquestioned assumption that we were being trained not to shape our own lives, but to serve reliably in the background. After I graduated, Preston offered me a job in his household. He wanted me to move in, take care of the cooking, the cleaning, and the laundry. The pay, minimum wage, with health insurance and paid vacation, sure, but still minimum wage. No bonuses, no recognition. My parents thought his offer was excellent and praised him for his so-called generosity, giving me a job where I could prove myself until I found a husband. Family helps family, they said, and Preston is so generous to pay you, even though, as his sister, you're actually obligated to run his household for room and board. I would have loved to flip them off for their misogyny, but back then, I didn't have the courage to stand up to them. I had practically no savings, no connections, and no job prospects. While the school staff helped other students look for work, they always said about me, Jess will work for her family. So I said yes. What else could I have done? Preston never treated me openly badly, but he never treated me like a sister either. I was expected to stick to generic products when shopping for myself, while buying top-shelf ingredients for Preston's dinner parties. $300 steaks, rare cheeses, imported seafood, the works. One evening, when he came home early, he caught me eating a Wagyu steak. Frowning, he stood in front of me and said, "Those steaks are for my guests, and I prepare them for you and your business friends. The meat smelled odd when I unpacked it. If you don't like me checking whether it's still good, you're free to hire an outside chef for your parties." Preston's face flushed with anger, and he seemed to be searching for a comeback. Eventually, he spun on his heel and marched out of the kitchen. I finished the steak in peace. Since then, I've taste-tested every expensive item he has me buy for his guests. I eat lobster and caviar, set aside a squab breast for myself, enjoy the salmon and champagne sauce, help myself to rare cheeses, and savor lemon meringue tartlets dusted with gold. Preston knows that a private chef would cost him far more than my labor. That's why he tolerates my sampling. In my extended family, arranged marriages are common. While my cousins were being married off, my parents didn't make a single attempt to introduce me to a potential husband. At first, I was confused. Then I understood. In their eyes, my only purpose was to look after my brother. That's fine by me. I've never been interested in boys or girls. I read about it online, and I think I'm ace. I've come to terms with living in my brother's shadow. Apart from regularly reviewing my household expenses, he doesn't care what I do in my free time. He's rarely home anyway. What he doesn't know, I had long since started studying in secret. I took courses in accounting, then financial analysis, then data science and basic programming. I listened closely to the conversations at his dinners. That's how I learned how startups are valued, which companies were merging, and which technologies would soon take off. And I invested. Part of my salary went into ETFs, then stocks, later also into crypto, but only selected projects. After 5 years, I had 6 figures in my accounts. After 8 years, I was a millionaire myself. And Preston had no idea. I stayed because I wanted continued access to his network. I was the housekeeper who discreetly served the food at every business dinner and memorized every word. He attracted sharp minds. His name became a brand in the scene. And I was right in the middle of it, as no one, as a shadow. I even swallowed my pride when Preston invited our parents for Thanksgiving and celebrated with them and his friends while I had no seat at the dinner table. Without complaint, I stayed in the role of the dutiful servant who handled everything behind the scenes: the catering, the servers for the evening, the bar staff. Everything could have continued like that, until Preston invited her to last Thanksgiving. Charlotte, beautiful, flawless, a debutante from an old East Coast family. Preston was instantly smitten. She moved in with him the following March and began to oversee my work. She wanted to see receipts, questioned why I was buying French butter while I was only allowed to buy discount brand groceries for myself. She challenged the fact that I was tasting all the delicacies I prepared for the guests. To avoid anyone getting food poisoning, I replied dryly. 1 spoonful or a single bite is enough to taste. Serving yourself a whole plate is outrageous. My contract includes room and board, I replied calmly, though I was seething inside. Your contract doesn't include access to the delicacies. I pressed my lips together and waited to see what else she had to say. She tapped her foot. When I didn't speak, she finally said, "Start acting according to your station." "Yes, ma'am," I replied curtly and saluted. She shot me a venomous look, turned on her heel, and disappeared from the kitchen. In the weeks that followed, I caught her more than once snooping through my phone and laptop, as if she expected to find something to use against me. What she didn't know, I really did use those devices only for household management. My private matters were handled on a second phone and a personal laptop I had bought myself. The laptop was locked in a small, inconspicuous safe box in my room. I'd purchased it years earlier. My digital life, my wealth, my coursework, my portfolio, was completely separate from the official household device on which I read her instructions and printed cleaning schedules. One time, I caught her snooping around my room, and I knew it was time to leave. The house manager, who had often received leftover delicacies from me, secretly changed the lock on my bedroom door. For a few days or weeks, my personal space was better protected from her curiosity until she figured it out and complained to Preston. So I hired a real estate agent to help me find a rental apartment in one of the residential towers in San Francisco for about a year. I had always wanted to live in a place where I could look down over the city. The viewing appointment came sooner than expected. To avoid suspicion or complaints that I was using the service car for personal outings, I scheduled it on the same day as my usual market run. The agent first showed me the pool, the gym, and all the other wonderful amenities available to residents. Then we took the elevator up, and she unlocked the door to the unit. 2 men stood in the hallway, kissing. The agent cleared her throat politely. "I'm sorry. I should have rung the bell. I didn't know you'd be here in person today." The men quickly, but not panically, separated. When they saw me, their eyes widened in alarm. I was standing in front of Nathaniel, one of Preston's business partners, and his personal assistant, Eric. The agent was about to introduce us, but I said, "We already know each other. Nathaniel and Eric, it's so nice to see you again." And I meant it. They sometimes visited me in the kitchen during parties, always respectfully and genuinely interested in my cooking techniques and recipes. "Are you the owner of this apartment?" I asked Nathaniel. "I am. Are you viewing this for Preston and Charlotte?" "For myself. I hope we can agree on a price. I think I can afford the market rate." Nathaniel gave me a long, puzzled look. Meanwhile, Eric said to the agent, "My boss and I would like to speak with Jess privately. Don't worry, you'll get your commission." Without fuss, the agent left the apartment. When they still didn't say anything and just stared at me, confused, I wandered through the unit. I liked it, and the view was breathtaking. Nathaniel and Eric whispered to each other in the hallway. I returned to them. It would be great if we could work something out. I'd need the apartment for about a year until I decide where to go next. Maybe I'll stay here in San Francisco. Sure, why not? Nathaniel said. I'd give you a discount on the rent if you promise to keep quiet about what you saw just now. I laughed. You're not out? I get that it's tough in the business world to be in a non-traditional relationship, especially in management. That's your business, and I'll keep it to myself. No need for financial incentives. I don't need them. I've got enough saved up. Nathaniel and Eric looked at each other, then back at me. Let's get dinner, one of them said, and you can tell us how you managed to save up enough, working as a housekeeper, to afford a place in this building. I grinned. Gladly. Of course, I only told them the careful version of how I'd done it. I didn't want them thinking I'd been insider trading. Besides, I still didn't know whether they'd turn around and rat me out to Preston behind my back. They didn't. Instead, they rented the place to me and lowered the rent by 30%. They paid the agent her full commission based on the market price, so she wouldn't get suspicious. I handed in my resignation only after I'd moved all my personal belongings to the new apartment. Preston's house manager helped me. There was an uproar in the family. How dare I abandon him and Charlotte so close to the wedding? Never mind that Charlotte hadn't asked for my help planning it. She'd hired a high-end firm that specialized in such things. On my last day, I returned the work phone and laptop, cutting off all contact for the time being. For years, my family had only reached me through those devices, and none of them had my personal contact info anymore. Maybe I'd give it to them again, eventually. For now, I just wanted peace. As it turned out, Nathaniel and Eric lived on the same floor. They owned all 3 apartments there. We saw each other regularly. Sometimes we cooked together, sometimes we went out for drinks or took a day trip. When I told them I was ace and didn't need a man by my side, they didn't say something like, "The right one will come along, and then you'll fall in love." They accepted me as I am. A few days later, Nathaniel made a proposal that I marry him, on paper, and accompany him as his wife to public events. He promised me a house by Lake Tahoe and a yearly salary of over $1 million. He also said he'd regularly give me jewelry. On top of that, he set aside a budget for designer clothes. I didn't say yes right away. I asked for time to think. I had enough money of my own. But the idea of being a thorn in Charlotte's side and a nuisance to Preston's snobby friends, who'd now have to welcome me into their circle, was too tempting to pass up. So I accepted Nathaniel's proposal. For the record, he's richer than Preston, and everyone knows it. I'd spent years in that world of wealth, as an invisible housekeeper in the background. I knew their games and schemes and how to avoid them or play along. Nathaniel hired an image consulting team to prepare me, as his wife, for their world. Thanks to them, I was integrated fairly smoothly into high society. Good personal friends of his helped as well. The first time Preston greeted us as a couple at one of his parties, his expression was tight, but he didn't dare say anything. How could he explain to his friends and business contacts that he resented his own sister for marrying a rich man, simply because he preferred to keep her small? Our team had spread the narrative that Nathaniel and I had met while I was managing Preston's household, as his executive household director. Charlotte even apologized to me. She claimed she hadn't known I was Preston's sister. Today, Nathaniel and I live in an arrangement that works perfectly for both of us. I have my own house by Lake Tahoe. When I'm in the city, I still stay in the small apartment I once rented from Nathaniel. Now it belongs to me. He still lives with Eric in the larger unit. I continue to invest. I travel. I now give talks on sustainable household management in tech households, a running joke that no one ever picks up on. After the panels, busy executives often approach me, asking if I'd be willing to take a look at their private domestic setups. I charge them a high hourly rate, far beyond what my brother ever paid me. My portfolio keeps growing. To this day, Preston has no idea how wealthy I am. He thinks the tailored clothing and jewelry I wear are all gifts from Nathaniel. One time, he joked that he ought to get a commission for introducing us, since I met Nathaniel in his household. Nathaniel and I just smiled. We noticed the puzzled looks from the other guests, not directed at us, but at Preston, who didn't notice a thing. Charlotte, however, picked up on the subtle disapproval aimed at him and smoothly redirected the conversation. She moved gracefully across the polished surface of social decorum. I respected that, even though I didn't find her particularly likable after everything that had passed between us. A few days later, an investor withdrew his support from one of Preston's new startups. The Inner Circle was a company that provided venture capital for various projects. It belonged to me, though I kept that hidden. Despite our personal differences, my projections had shown Preston's project had a high likelihood of success. Officially, I was listed at the Inner Circle as a consultant for structural integrity and reputational culture, a title that meant little to most, but gave me exactly the cover I needed. My withdrawal delayed the startup by at least 6 months, my small punishment for his arrogance.